you now have exactly what you need to eliminate the number one cause of long redline cycles. The biggest reason redlining takes so long is that we're not using contracts designed to close the deal. All contracts are intended to address the parameters of a relationship by defining the parties' rights, allocating risk, and setting performance expectations. Unfortunately, both sides of the deal typically start with a very party-centric position. So that means that if the seller's paper is very pro-seller and the buyer's paper is very pro-buyer. But instead of an agreement that's strictly focused on protecting a party, you need an agreement that is more balanced. Whether an agreement is balanced or not is not an analysis about whether the agreement is fair. It's whether the deal taken as a whole, not just pricing, but the allocation of risk and rights and obligations, is the agreement as a whole profitable enough? The very act of redlining then becomes a case-by-case or buyer-by-buyer or sale-by-sale process of getting to an agreement that is profitable enough. It's moving closer to the middle, balancing the rights, risks, and obligations in such a way that both parties perceive adequate value from the agreement. With the data that you've gathered in step 1, you have a much better idea of where the middle is. And if the goal is to reduce redlines, we can use that data to prepare agreements that are closer to the middle to begin with. We can use that data to find a more market appropriate agreement that represents satisfactory value for both sides. The second step in the frictionless close system is to use that intelligence so that you can revise your sales agreement in a way that it more accurately reflects what you're actually agreeing to. You're going to prepare a template that better reflects market expectations. You're going to prepare a close the deal agreement. So circling back to our limitation of liability example, if 90% of the time you're agreeing to a higher super cap, then why not agree to that higher super cap in the first place and address the risk in a different way, perhaps by purchasing additional insurance coverage or investing in tighter security? Maybe you discovered that in 50% of your deals you're agreeing to a higher super cap, but only when the contract value exceeds a certain threshold. It might make sense then to prepare a different version of the agreement that you pull out when you know that the contract value is going to meet or exceed that threshold. These are also the kinds of variations that you're going to capture in your playbook, which is a tool we'll talk about in greater detail in step 3. But the point here is that you're going to revise your standard agreement so it will be a better business tool for closing your deal. Speaking of better business tools, it's important to think about who uses the agreement once the deal is closed. It might be the technical team who refers to the agreement to identify who they need to notify if there's a suspected security breach. Or it might be the support team who needs to determine what credits they owe a buyer if they've slipped SLAs. It might be your user team who needs to figure out how much notice period they need before they can signal their intent to renew. But it's typically not the lawyer unless things have foobarred pretty badly. A business tool should be one that is effective for the people who use it. It needs to be an accessible tool and one that is easily understood. In a sales agreement that's easily understood is one that is drafted clearly and concisely, one that minimizes the use of prepositional phrases and uses active voice to make it clear who is required to do what and when. The added benefit of an accessible agreement is that a clearly written, plainly understood agreement is one that doesn't have to be referred to outside counsel for interpretation.